Welcome back to the channel, and here is day 4 of the World Cup recap, where we had 19 goals go in across 4 games in what was probably the best day of the tournament so far. The first game yesterday was Germany against Curaçao, with Germany beating them 7-1 with an absolute mauling from the Germans. Germany became the only team to ever score 7 goals on 3 separate occasions in World Cup games. They did it in 2002 against Saudi Arabia, 2014 against Brazil, and now obviously again yesterday against Curaçao with that 7-1 win. It was total domination from Germany, especially in the opening 15 minutes. Curaçao couldn't actually even get out of their own box, but Curaçao did start to come back into the game and even managed to get an equaliser, but the water break, the hydration break that came in then totally killed off any momentum that Curaçao had, because they actually created a few chances before equalising and after equalising. So you never know, if that hydration break never came, it might not have killed their momentum and we could have had a shock on the cards. But it was a fairly one-way traffic game from Germany, which they went out well in the end. From what I saw yesterday, Germany's strength in depth will make them very, very hard to beat in this tournament. And out of all the games that I've seen so far, I'd probably say Germany and the USA looked the most convincing teams in the opening 4 days of the World Cup. The second game of the day was the Netherlands against Japan, which finished 2-2. The first half was an absolute snooze fest, to be totally honest. A few chances here and there, but overall it was probably the most anticipated game of the day, and the first half didn't really back it. I kind of thought to myself watching it that if we got a goal, it would open up the game a bit, and that's exactly what we got. Both times in the game, really, that the Netherlands went ahead, going up 1-0 and then 2-1, they never really kicked on. They kind of sat back both times and just invited pressure from Japan onto themselves. So to be totally honest, the Netherlands were the kind of conductors of their own downfall and not picking up the 3 points. And I kind of felt then after the game that if Japan actually went after them from the get-go and didn't kind of sit in a bit, I suppose, and take a lot of the pressure from Netherlands in the first half and actually went for it themselves. I know, of course, they had a few chances, but I thought if they went for it themselves from the offset, that they actually could have turned over Netherlands yesterday. I thought Japan were very, very good, but to be totally honest, they could have went for the win themselves. The third game then of the day was Ivory Coast against Ecuador. Ivory Coast going out 1-0 winners in that one. Ecuador were probably the better team of the first half, hitting the crossbar twice, and would probably go through, then kind of miss chances in the grander scheme of the game. It was a fairly even game throughout. It was probably another one of those games in the World Cup that we've seen so far that a point apiece would have been the fairest result. But yeah, Ecuador looked very good going forward in the first half, and even had a few chances here and there in the second half, but never took advantage of it, which Ivory Coast did take advantage of the fact that Ecuador didn't push on themselves. Ivory Coast, of course, then hit the crossbar themselves, but a 90th minute lovely finish from Manchester United player Amad Diallo was the difference in the game. A great finish from him. In fairness, he was a second half substitute. Very good when he came on. Superb finish, and Ivory Coast now with 3 points in that group. It was just Ivory Coast's 4th ever win in the World Cup, and they've actually created a bit of separation for themselves now with the other teams who are in that group, with obviously Netherlands and Japan picking up 1-0 or 1-1 draw there. So they're on 2 points. Ecuador are on 0, and now Ivory Coast are on 3. Of course, Ivory Coast have always had kind of good players, especially attacking players, going through history, and you've Didier Drogba, Yaya Toure, Solomon Kalou, a lot of these lads, but Ivory Coast actually have the opportunity to qualify for a knockout stage of World Cup for the first time in their history, so they have a very decent chance of doing so now after their opening day win against Ecuador. Of course, then the 4th and final game of the day was Sweden 5, Tunisia 1, an absolutely emphatic win for Graham Potter and Sweden to kick off their campaign. Alexander Isak looked like he was back to his best, scoring 2 brilliant goals and providing assists as well for Victor Gyökeres. The possession was fairly even throughout in the game, but Every time Sweden were going forward, they actually looked like scoring, which was the biggest difference really, as Tunisia didn't really create that many clear-cut chances. Of course, the goal that they got was okay, but overall, Sweden tore them apart in what was a fairly even game. It probably wasn't a 5-1 game if you were to look at the overall stats of the game and everything, but Sweden were clinical, and look, it concluded an absolutely brilliant day of World Cup football. As I said, 19 goals went in across the 4 games, and it was a definitely probably the highlighting day of the World Cup so far on day 4. Coming up then this evening and tonight, I'm going to go through the games now that we have coming forward. So we've Spain against Cape Verde. Of course, Pico Lopez from Shamrock Rovers is playing with Cape Verde, which is going to be a big one for him. Belgium then against Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Uruguay, and Iran and New Zealand. They're the 2 kind of later games. Belgium and Egypt, I suppose, will be the real one to look out for. I think that a lot of people will be watching, and Spain are probably going into the tournament as one of the favourites with the likes of Lamine Yamal and things like that. But there'll be a good Irish contingency watching the game as well, there to see how Pico Lopez gets on for Cape Verde. So yeah, that's day 4 of the World Cup recap. If you enjoyed the video, make sure and like and subscribe, and send on the channel to somebody who might be interested in seeing these recaps every day. Until day 5, I'll talk to you later.